right, it is loading. All right, we are live. Lafayette Mandala, Busy for Houdier, favorite warrior, Black Panther in the building on this Saturday morning. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Like, share, and subscribe. As always, today we are back with Brother Ogundiran. We're going to be talking about Eshu, the Orisha Eshu, from a Isese perspective. What's going on, Brother Ogundiran?
How y'all doing this morning? Or how are you doing this morning?
Doing well, doing well. Brother Sean just popped in. He's probably listening in the back chat. So it's all good. So if you never looked at this before or looked at this series, I would encourage people to go back and listen to our videos from Ogun from an Isese perspective. We did how to get into the tradition the best way we know how from an Isese perspective. So this is our third installment. We are going to be talking about Eshu. So let me pull up these questions and we will jump right into it.
All right.
All right, Baba Ogundiran. Who is Eshu from an Isese perspective?
That's a little difficult to answer in just one or two words. Eshu has plenty of functions within the tradition, and has plenty of important functions. Some of his functions that we hear about immediately, one of them is being the carrier of sacrifice. Another one you might find is he's the law enforcing agent for Olodumare. He is also a messenger. He's also the divinity's avenger when need be. Eshu holds a lot of different functions within the traditions, but the probably most important is that he is the mitigator between blessing and misfortune.
So when you say the carrier of sacrifices, could you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Let me give you an example from Ifa, or the use of why the excuse me, why Eshu is so important to the Babalaos. It is because of this, where they say big bull, which is the carrier of sacrifice. During a process, even in the Riru process, where they actually put the ebo together. When the ebo's put together, this calabash, sometimes it's in a leaf, sometimes it's in a bag, just depending on what the person has, is left somewhere, whether at the shrine of Eshu, which obviously you see goes immediately to Eshu, or it is left at various places, maybe the fork of the road, maybe on the side of the road, maybe on a riverbank. These are still all places that are associated with Eshu, where Eshu can come retrieve that ebo. It is thought when he retrieves that ebo, he distributes it between the right side, which is like the Ajagun, and the side that is like benevolent, which are like the Orisha. And without this interaction, Ebo would not necessarily work, because Eshu is the one who pleases. And as far as I know, is the only one that deals with the left-hand side, or the Ajogun. He interacts with them. Sometimes thought to be the head as well, where we have Olori Ajogun.
So for the non-practitioners in the room, basically the left and the right, you can think of it as the benevolent and malevolent. So Eshu is one, if not the only Orisha that, well, not the only, but one of the Orishas that can go to left or to right.
Actually, he is, from my understanding, he is the only Orisha that does it because of the way that he is made. I don't want to get into that, but he has that function. He does not conform. It is not like he goes to both sides or is either on one side or the other. He just does not conform to them. So it gives him the ability to go back and forth, from my understanding.
I'm biased.
Right.
Okay. That's interesting. That's interesting. So, would you say that Eshu is one of the more important Orishas?
Absolutely. Uh, like I said, Eshu is responsible for a great deal of many things. As a messenger divinity, he plays messenger or carries messages back and forth to divinity and man alike, also to Olodumare, for which he reports to daily. Without Eshu, we couldn't really, or I shouldn't say we couldn't, but it would be very difficult to mitigate misfortune out of our lives. It is the one reason, or where it's thought to be where you offer to Eshu first. This is probably the reason why we do it. We offer to Eshu first, and you can think of it in a couple ways. You can think of it as to not cause trouble, or for Eshu not to ensure there is no trouble, whichever way that you want to think of it. But we offer to Eshu so that he will mitigate misfortune away from us and allow blessings to come into our lives. It is often said that those who want to keep their blessings should go often and offer to Eshu.
Interesting. Where is Eshu from?
The one place that I know directly is Idolofin. I don't know where it is in Nigeria, but the Oriki that I know is Eshu Odara Omokorin Idolofin, which is Omokorin refers to him in a, I guess, age, being young. And then that man, Eshu Odara, the one from Idolofin. I've also heard that, what is the other one?
Get to?
Yes, that is one. I was going to bring that one last, but I've heard of Ketu. I don't know that much about it, but I've only heard through it through reading. But I do have some questions concerning it for my own research, just from stuff that I've been exposed to. But I think I wrote it down because I wasn't too familiar with it. I couldn't remember it. Let me see. Did I? Yeah. Ishere. He's often known as the son of Ishere. Which is from my understanding, another town. I'm sure there might be. I'm sure there are other towns that are associated with him, but I'm not too versed on the towns that Eshu is associated with.
Understood. And for those, for the audience, for the listening audience, understand that Orisha usually originates somewhere in some town, in some place in Nigeria, where they're like the the deity of that town or deity of that place. So that's what we're referring to, the places that we're referring to.
Also, to add to that, it's not always sometimes where they originate, though that would be a place. It may also be where they settled or had a very strong influence in that community or within that area.
Absolutely. So if the deity traveled, if went to different places, maybe in more than one area.
Right.
So it could be this city and then this city, and that doesn't mean that they worship in the same way in those two cities.
Right.
So it gets a little dicey the more you get into the literature, but that's just some examples.
Well, another, just to explain, like when people, Oshun's a good example of this. If you take Oshun away from a river, I suppose you're traveling, can you no longer access Oshun?
Hmm.
If your family moves somewhere, let's say to a spot that didn't have this great river, but might have had a lake, she does not change the divinity that she's a river divinity by, a river by her own name. That doesn't change. But the idea that it's still water and you can go to that water for Oshun, because that wouldn't make any sense if you traveled somewhere without a river.
I guess
Right.
that means you come off.
Right. So and it's already happened in Nigeria. You have communities where Oshun has went to other places that did not have this huge river going through it, as well as other divinities as well. So it's just something to think about.
Okay, why is Eshu labeled as a trickster divinity?
Um, hmm, why? I guess somewhere within it's his nature, and then on top of that, it might be part of his responsibility. Let me give you an example where it's his responsibility, kind of. If you perform Ebo, or excuse me, if you go for a divination, whether Ifa or the 16 Kari shells, and you're given advice, and you hear the advice, but you decide not to take the advice or do the Ebo or prescribed Ebo. Now, this is particularly true when it comes to averting some type of misfortune, if that's what the Ebo is for. So if you do not do the Ebo, for which, remember, goes to, part of it will go to Eshu. Eshu favors no one empty-handed. So if you do not do your Ebo, then I guess if you want to say he's the one that does it, I don't like looking at it. I just look at it as those are the consequences of your actions. He did not stop it. He didn't mitigate it because you did not provide Ebo. Um, Other things and other stories were it's just part of his nature. Sometimes he's clever about it and he causes a lot of misfortune. Sometimes he gets himself into trouble, like a like the story where he taunts Babaluaye, or excuse me, Obaluaye. Um, and within that interaction, he burns him with the pokers to cause like smallpox. So as Shu's body becomes scarred, so he flees or hides behind the Yangi. This is one of the reasonings of why, or they tell people why, the river Yangi has pores in it, because of where Babaluaye hit him with his poker. Now, that's not the only story that explains why we use Yangi. That is just a story to explain, to give you an example. Um, there's I'm trying to think of another one where there's a story where, and this also has to do with Ebo. Um, I think you're familiar with it, with the guy with the hat that had white on one side and the hat that was red on one side, and the two farmers.
Ah, yeah, I am familiar with this.
So two friends went to go get divination, and they were basically told if you don't make Ebo, it would end the friendship. So to make a long story short, as she went down the road with a huge hat, one white on one side, one red on the other side. Both farmers were on either end, so one saw a person wearing a white hat, the other one saw a person wearing a red hat. So an argument ends up taking place about who's lying about who about the guy, and then it ruins the friendship. So it's just part of his nature. It's part of his character. It's not necessarily bad in nature. He is doing what he is meant to do in his function.
And that's going to come back around this discussion, because I have another question that's probably going to lead into that as well. So when we talk about Eshu, what colors do you see associated with Eshu?
Most of the time, you'll see red and black. I have seen a variant of it where it's red, black, and white. Um, and I don't mean in the necklace. I just mean in the usage of colors in his shrine. But typically it's red and black for what I've seen. The insignia or the ide of Eshu is alternating red and white beads. Excuse me, red and black beads.
Interesting. I've never seen the white, but that I can see that. Okay. What about Eshu's implements?
Outside of the stone that is used for Eshu, which is called Yangi, something it implements is the ogo, which is a knotted club. Some traditions use a regular club. I forget the name of it. I'm just so used to the knotted club. The Eshu ogo, not to be confused with a regular ogo. An ogo is a cudgel. But the dance wand of Eshu is called Eshu ogo or ogo Eshu. I can't remember which one's in front. But that is the wand for where you'll see them. It's a it's a statue of him, and his hat normally goes back like this or curves back. Like in the picture that
that's what that is. Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen people carry that.
Yeah, that's his dance wand. But the implement that he would carry is actually a knotted club. He's also used to having what they call an abe, which is a small knife or razor.
I'm gonna ask you about that.
Right. This is normally some of the you see them put on the eligbaras, which are the clay Eshus made for indoor. They're preparations made for indoor Eshus. A lot of times the abe is put on top of them.
So those are what those sharp metallic.
Right. It's a blade. It's almost equivalent to what we would use as a razor blade.
I see in the diaspora they use like nails for that.
Yeah, a lot of times before, like, they are nails, but a lot of times people will bang them out flat to form like a blade more than a circle. You know, and then they'll bend it back. I'm not quite sure where that comes from, but I can understand where a nail would have been thought to be that blade, because it's metal, it's sharp, you know, but it's not the same thing. It's actually it's a razor. It's a very small razor. Actually, if you give me a second, I can actually show you an example of a cudgel and the blade.
I was gonna give them an example of the ogo. If you look at the movie Black Panther, you look at what M'Baku was carrying, that type of staff, not that long, but the shape is the Eshu ogo.
Yeah, it's some places in I'm not sure whether they do this in Nigeria, but I know some other places that tool is common. You see it all over South Africa, and a lot of times it's used as it's a hunting implement. But sometimes when they're longer, it's used as an implement of authority.
Right. I can see that. Definitely looks like one.
Right.
Even from the way it was portrayed in the movie, he carried it like that. Like
right. It's probably because that wasn't ones that are used for hunting are shorter. They're more like little billy clubs.
Yeah, because you got to hit things. You don't want to be swinging that
right
thing in the forest, you know, knocking over.
It's almost the same theory of like in the 1950s and 60s, the clubs that the police used to carry.
The billy clubs. Yeah.
Yes, almost the same concept.
Right. I mean, if you're going to use that for any type of close quarters combat or hunting or anything. You want condensed, not
Right.
Huge. Same principle, with Shaka when he shortened the spear. Like, we're gonna get close quarters. I can't be using this big old thing.
Exactly.
Is there a specific number of manifestations of Eshu?
No.
No specific number whatsoever in Isese.
I'm going to say no.
What about the number 21?
I'm not going to discredit it. I don't know whether it's a Spanish thing. I don't know whether it comes from Nigeria. I have no clue. But either way, if there is some association with 21, then it's the same association with 7 and Ogun.
It can't. And for those who didn't watch or haven't watched our Ogun presentation, it's not so much a number of the divinity, more that it is describing towns and places where he's famous.
Well, not necessarily that as well, but also the number doesn't quite. It's like it's someone's perception of what that person knows, right? But I don't know whether the number has anything to do with in the culture. But there's no way it can be 21. There's but between the consecrations and the number of ways that you can make consecrate Eshu, between the numbers of ways that you have roads for Eshu, and then you have the different like elegbaras that you make, there's just no way that it could just be 21.
It would be made way more than 21.
Yes, much more. But I don't know, like I said, and we're not talking about orikis. Normally when I hear you say that, I'm more thinking of roads, which are Eshus that are put together to serve particular functions.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. If there is, I mean, please someone notify me. But no, I just can't see it.
Okay.
Or if it is 21, then every particular town has their version of 21, which still doesn't lead to 21.
Oh man, I hope if that's the case, we're in a bigger problem than before.
I can understand the confusion knowing what I know now about Eshu. I can understand in the confusion where it came here, the roads, the misunderstanding. Eshu's confusing to begin with if you go other than just the worship of Eshu. Of the things you can do with Eshu, the types of Eshus you can, it's crazy. It's very unique to Eshu.
Yeah, and it's something that is unique to Eshu. What do you call priest of Eshu?
I would know them as El Eshu, but I don't know whether there's any other terminology for it. I'm pretty sure. El Eshu, Oni Eshu, one who possesses or has Eshu. It could also mean one who makes Eshu or one who is Eshu. And then some references, I've even heard it to using Eshu, the divinity, as the subject in it. You can say it might be someone who is being afflicted by Eshu, or who not necessarily Eshu, but anyone who's going through a lot of problems necessarily could be labeled as an LSU. I'm not quite sure if you can take that out of context and say it that way, but within literature, I've seen it kind of that way. Like the removing of misfortune off of my back. I'm trying to remember. My mind's not here with me right now. I can't think of it right now. Maybe it'll come back to my mind. But I was the verse where or the sentence where the line at Eshu comes from. We're talking about where to remove Eshu from off of my back, or to remove misfortune and stuff from my back. But as far as a common, that would be the word I would know of. I'm not quite sure whether it is the proper word. I'm only assuming that because of all the other Orisha, the way you have Olorisha, Oniyemonja, Onishango, Ologun, Onifa. So just those words and combinations of the word put together.
All right. I've read in Eshu's literature that he has eyeballs that can chase away evil. Can you speak to what they're referring to?
Yes, I believe that is Areyijulegunlo. It refers it since he's associated with the Ajagun, or we're gonna say EB, misfortune, he has the ability to turn it around. So I get what they're referring to. If it's coming and if he wants to stop it, all he needs to do is look at it. Remember, he has the ability to mitigate misfortune in Ire. You see what I'm saying? So he has the ability in to either, like, the Olori Ajagun, I guess, can be interpreted as the head of the Ojogun or the most senior of them, which would be Eshu.
And for those that don't know, the Ojogun are, like we were saying before, malevolent forces.
Well, actually, since I keep bringing that up, in English, a lot of times they're called the warlords, but
Yeah.
collectively, they're just a group of misfortunes like death, sickness, loss, imprisonment, was it paralysis?
I mean, even a headache could be an Ojogun.
Yes, in a way. Normally, when it's separate, we would call it an EB, but yes, anything that attacks you could be an Ojogun.
So going back to what we were saying earlier, Eshu is sometimes called the head of the Ojogun, and he's also on the what we would call the blessings side, I guess, or the benevolent side. So he plays that role. Okay, is Eshu? I know you're gonna love this question, Baba. I put this in here specifically for you. Is Eshu the opener of the way?
I'm gonna say this. I have done research and not been able to find any Oriki. I'm not gonna say there isn't, but any Oriki that I know, I've asked people. Now, there's some things we've come up with that is close, like path maintainer. Yeah, but nothing that I've ever found about creating the path or even really opening it, which would be creating it or creating the road. All those narratives seem to belong to Ogun, which we have literature for. Now, I think because of where they say this is where the reason why we do is for him to open the road. I think more it's the concept we offer to Eshu to mitigate misfortune in anything that we're about to undertake. To allow him to either say, okay, stop, get out of the situation, or hey, can you get rid of these guys so we can, for things to go peaceful, so there's no trouble.
Why in rituals or ceremonies we offer to Eshu first.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
So that idea of going to him kind of first did not dissipate, or the importance of that, but the reasoning may have kind of been lost. Right.
Okay.
At least from what like I said, from what I've researched, I can't find anything that says anything about creating. There's like 3 or 4 that I have found, uh, and other people have helped me with to. I can understand and all of them have to do with the maintaining a path or making sure it doesn't overgrow, and that would make sense. But creating it, no. Now, to maintain it to make sure it doesn't become closed, that I can get. Because if anyone who's done any type of landscaping or cut a path through a woods would realize if you don't maintain it, if people don't walk on it constantly, it just grows right back.
Absolutely. I mean, that's nature in general. You know,
Yeah.
Shoot, even sand does that. You know, even if you look in Egypt, every now and again you'll hear them say, "We rediscovered this temple." And you'd be like, "Why did they rediscover it? What happened?" It's because the sand covered it. And they had to find it again. That's basically what happened. We had a temple, bad sandstorm came through, we lost it.
Yep.
Is Elegba the warrior side of Eshu?
Not that I'm aware of. I can't find any literature about this. I've even asked about this. This seems to be more of a Lukumi point of view of it. But saying that every divinity has the ability to defend and fight on some level. So though we may have divinities that aren't labeled as warriors, it does not diminish their ability to fight or defend. It's just they're not known for that. And it's not things that they're particularly praised about. But even in Obatala's literature, there literature that speaks of him, and references him in ways that is not typical for him. But every divinity has an aspect of it that can defend and fight.
That's just nature.
Yeah.
Everything in nature has a defense mechanism, a way to protect and defend itself. It's no different.
And grow. To protect, defend, and reproduce. Yep.
So the word Elegba, is that short for Elegbara?
Yes, depending on where the tonal marks are for them. But to keep it simple, Elegbara or Elegbara is the same thing as Elegba. It's just a shortened, condensed version. But when you say it that way, you need to be careful because it changes the meaning of it. I won't get into the meaning, but it will change them. If you want to be safe, to be completely understood, even if you don't get the accent right, say Elegbara. But as far as the definition of this word, I don't know. I thought I knew what it meant. And after some further research, when I realized the tonal mark difference that my teacher helped to provide me with, Elegbara, I would say at this point is an obscured word, but it does refer to the clay Eshus. And I don't mean to say clay that it's clay and other things mixed in them, but the reason they're made of clay is because they're indoors. They cannot survive outside. So most Eshus should go outside. I'm not gonna, there are people that do have the Yangi stones inside their house. Every place is different, but typically within the literature, it should go outside. If it doesn't, there are exceptions, for everything. But if you have an Elegbara that's typically made to go inside the house, then the Yangi typically made to go outside the house. And there's different elegbaras as well. They're made for, they can be made for different functions. I don't know them as well as where I would know the different roads for Eshu. I'm not
So
too in the elegbaras.
it's just from what we know is a type of Eshu.
It is Eshu.
Okay.
It's an indoor Eshu.
Indoor Eshu.
A lot of times people will get them because of, if you got one outside and one inside, a lot of times it becomes easier. It's a convenience thing. Yeah. Instead of running up and down or inside your house, outside your house, back and forth.
Eshu all around.
Right. That's why a lot of times you see people, initiations that will typically have multiple Eshus. They don't have them because of the sense, oh, I just need I have all these issues just to have it. They all serve functions. All of them will serve functions. So, like right now, I have 2. I'm searching to get 3. I'm looking for 1 more. But all of them have different functions that will help me either through the work I do, or whether it's just for me, whether personal worship, or whether I got to deal with clients. You know, just the way they're made, how they're done, you know.
What is the prayer position for Eshu?
I can say the prayer position you don't want to be in for Eshu is kneeling. This prayer position is typically stooping or like bending over, but it should be within a standing position. You should not kneel. Typically, they say to stoop or bend over.
And for those unfamiliar, there are deities you kneel for. There are deities you stand for. So it's important to know that when conducting any type of work. That's just the culture.
All of them have different prayer positions. Yeah.
So for Babalaos, what role does you play with Babalaos and the work that they do?
Without Eshu, there would be no Riru.
And explain Riru briefly.
Riru is the Riru is an offering with a collection of prayers on top of prayers on top of prayers on top of prayers. It could also be likened to like sending a letter or a message on top of prayers on top of prayers on top of prayers. And it normally comes in a tiny calabash. The process is kind of long. There's just prayers and reinforcements of prayers and more prayers. And then there's a lot of prayers.
You ain't going nowhere.
Then there may be echo, palm oil, and different ingredients that are inside this cup, or calabash, for which they prepare. And this is the ebol that is left to be given to Eshu in an appropriate place wherever it is asked to be left to. That is important because it carries your message also, which Eshu will deliver to Olodumare as well. He will prescribe those things to appease the left as he's taking it as well. So the things that are attacking you, the misfortunes, may be appeased. So Eshu is fundamentally critical to the worship, or excuse me, to the Babalao when it comes to divination. For the work can't be done without the help of Eshu. It's why Eshu is so important and so well connected to Ifa. That's why the relationship between them is so strong. They
so
work.
When you hear a practitioner, particularly an Ifa practitioner or Babalao, and I will say that they don't deal with Eshu, is that a red flag?
Yeah, it's a little more than a red flag. I mean, if you're a Babalao, That's a little more than a red flag. You know,
is it a flag on fire? What's more than a red flag?
What do you mean by you don't deal with Eshu?
Hey, the things I see on Facebook.
Look, I'm not the all-seeing, all-knowing, but yeah, that sounds like a neon red flag with flames around it.
Run.
I wouldn't say go far as say it's run, but I say step back about 30 feet. You don't.
If I have to move 30 feet away from somebody, I might as well run.
I might. Someone would have to explain to me in great detail how that is possible.
In great detail. Huh?
I mean, on the Opon board, the face that appears on the top of it is Eshu.
Oh man!
I'm saying, so
and for those of not, he's talking about the tray in which Baba allows divine on. If you've ever seen one, an Opanifa, the faces on the tray are representatives of Eshu.
I mean, even sometimes in some traditions, I don't know whether it's universally, but I do know in a lot of traditions where some of the Ikin that are left over represent Eshu. So I just don't.
How do you get away from that? Is what you want?
Yeah, yeah.
We have a custom-made tray with no faces.
I'm not even saying that could, but then again, even that might. There's other traditions where they have like I think it's called a Ifa, like it's Ifa's money, and it's in a ring, and they put an Ikin in that ring, and it sits above it like it is like Eshu. So I mean that there is different. Yeah, it's just not gonna happen.
So why do you think back in a period in which missionaries were coming into Yoruba land, why do you think they equated Eshu with the biblical Lucifer or Satan, or commonly known as the devil?
Why do I think they did it?
Yeah, why do you think that happened?
Well, if let me answer it this way. There's a lot of things about Eshu taken from a European perspective that would be considered, I guess, evil to them. But even if you look at Christianity within the Old Testament and you look at Satan, Satan doesn't appear the same way as it does in the New Testament.
It's true.
Satan was more of an adversary, not this burn all, But that being said, I think it is because of some of the qualities and some of the things that Eshu does. And I don't think there's enough said about this divinity to promote a lot of good things to be said. Like there's contrary to what we've been talking about and him dealing so much with the left, we have a name that is like Eshu La'alu, which is literally the benevolence of the town. Eshu is known for changing bad luck to good and vice versa. Eshu is a divinity that is able to provide great wealth. It is not, Eshu shouldn't be always looked bad in a negative light because of what his function is. Yeah.
I feel like we do in the diaspora, like as soon as somebody mentions Eshu, he's tricking me or something missing in my house, or I lost something that's got to be Eshu. You know what I'm saying? We don't never think of the good parts, and maybe we just don't know them. But that's what we do.
So much within his function causes him to be looked at kind of like in a bad light, and then some of his character traits don't help either. But he's not. If he was corrupt, it's kind of hard to go against a culture that's taught character, and then to have one of their divinities that seems to be, all hell and brimstone. Actually, in a way, Ogun is probably worse.
Talk about it.
So,
that's why I'm trying to, maybe they didn't have a good, understanding
well,
of the divinity.
when
if
you
I first pick a divinity to be looked at, I'm not sure I would have picked Eshu. I might have picked Ogun.
Obaluaye is another one.
Why not? Why
So,
not him?
right. It's just because when you look at this from a European point of view and not from the way they view it, you misunderstand so much. Yes, Obaluaye might cause smallpox, but it's also the divinity to cure it or to get rid of it, to get it away. Don't come here. So Eshu should not be looked at in that type of negative light, because a lot of times, and almost anyone who ever goes to do a reading and doesn't Ebo is working with Eshu, regardless of whether you see it or realize it.
Maybe it was the colors.
Maybe it was the colors. You're funny. But yeah, I mean, he's just I think and even in his literature, it talks about him providing wives, it talks about him providing money, it talks about him providing children. So we just don't, and I think what it is we get so much of the general, we look a lot of times at these divinities up front for just what they are and the general purposes they serve, instead of looking in their literature to really understand the divinity. Then you get to see where Eshu is actually very well known, for causing blessings, people loving Eshu. So, but if you don't really read his literature, or if you don't really study it, if you're just always getting the same information that is stereotypically out there, not ask questions about it. Typically, if it doesn't make any sense, ask questions about it. But a lot of people will just take the information. Oh, it's red, it's black. Okay, it's 21, it's 3. Okay, fork in the road. And and a lot of and a lot of times maybe that's all you need, because maybe you're not looking at that divinity in that way. You're just using him for that purpose. So, but yeah, I think a lot more research should be done on Eshu, or at least for general people, to make people realize that Eshu doesn't always, though he has just as much as negative stuff as he does about Ogun. And the funny thing is those two roll together. So matter of fact, Eshu, Ogun, Obaluaye, and Ogun were thought to be all friends at one time. You see, that's a hell of a combination.
I'm just saying I wouldn't want to be walking in the forest and see those three.
Not when they're having a bad day.
Oh no. I'm just gonna make a run for it. Why do people refer to Eshu as the spiritual enforcer, or the spiritual police, or
that
divine,
comes
or all types of stuff?
That comes from the Oriki forum, Olopa Dumare, which means he's the law enforcing agent of I was about to say Eshu. He's a law enforcing agent of Olodumare.
So that is in his literature. That is his responsibility.
Matter of fact, if we had to equivalent him with something, this could be funny. It would be the police.
So Eshu is 12. You're not familiar. Okay, 12 is a code Black community police.
Oh, okay. See,
he's the one time. He's the 12. He's 5-0. I know you know 5-0.
Oh, yes.
All right, I'm getting down to your generation.
Right. You're funny. Yes, I know 5-0.
Oh boy, I'm about to say, damn. What else I got to say?
What? I was like, no, it's actually. I was about to say I was about to say no, it's 11. I thought you were talking about Stranger Things, but never mind. The show. There's a character named 11 on it. Never mind.
So we already went over that. Okay, we kind of went over this, but just to give more context, where is Eshu usually kept?
Okay. The general rule is Eshu goes outside.
Outside.
Now, whether I've never heard anyone say in the backyard. I've seen and heard people say in the front by the door. I've heard people say as long as I've heard some people say by you can put it by the side of your house. I've heard people say don't put it in the back of your house. Then I know people that have it in the back of their house. So the general rule seems to be it outside.
Outside. In
Outside.
some form of fashion.
Right.
Outside.
But that's not to say that there aren't issues that are made like using the yangi that people don't keep inside. Some people will keep them inside and invert a pot over it. You know, some people will keep it in a bowl with a lid. Some people just be right out in the open. You know, it just really depends. But the general rule is it should go outside.
Can you talk about why it's kept outside?
A lot of people will say just because of its primary function. It mitigates misfortune and blessings. You really want to be around something that's mitigating death, sickness, loss. You know, I'm not saying
the turnaround
Ojogun. Right. Or and not always deal or turn it around. Sometimes he deals it out. You know, now that's
wrong house.
That's the reason I've heard, but if it's in, I guess that's why if it's people have it in their house, why sometimes they avert a pot over it or keep it inside a pot with a lid. But that's not to say someone who has it in a dish where it's out in the open is wrong. It's just what it is.
There's an issue that you bury outside, right?
As far as my knowledge, there's a issue called Asheta. I'm not quite sure whether all roads of this issue are prepared in the same way for where it is buried. But from what my understanding is, an issue, Asheta is a road. It's a spell, like a spell repellent issue. It's a guard per se against people who might do any type of, for lack of a better word, witchcraft, throw spells at you, attack you, in that manner. But it's buried, from my understanding. You don't see, if you're there to witness it, of course you'll see it. You'll see the yangi and everything, but it's not something that's tangible. You're not going to pick it up. It's going to be buried in the ground. And even when I've seen it, when it's not buried, it's in a large pot. And they stick it by your front door. So typically it's buried by your front door. I even far to say maybe toward the beginning of your property. Like if you have a driveway, or maybe your car pulls up that corner on either end of the driveway, but you see why. It's something to keep guard in front of the house in case anything comes. But yeah, a lot. But like I said, I'm not quite sure whether all of them are made that way. It's just the ones that I've been exposed to are made that way.
Here's a good one for you, Baba. Is there a distinct difference in the way Eshus are made in the diaspora and the way they are made in Yoruba land?
Yes, but I will also say this, the reason I paused. From what I know of how to make and what I've been exposed to, there are some similarities, and then there are just things that just do not look anything alike or have anything to do with, from what I've read. But most of it looks like what I have seen in the diaspora and what I've known through my earlier years. They more look like the preparations of how you would make elegbaras, but they're not done in the same way. Like I think where they talk about molding a figure with the cement actually comes from molding the figure of the head when we make elegbaras. You see what I'm saying? Now the ingredients that you might put in, like they use like railroad dirt. Did I say railroad dirt? Wow. Like dirt from a crossroad, I don't know why I said that. From a courthouse, whatever the ingredients are, they mix up and then they put the load in the bottom of it, and then they use another ota or a small stone or a larger stone, and they form that all over it. That's not how we make elegbaras, but the forming of like the clay and how they do the cement and maybe sometimes the mixture in it looks similar. And sometimes even when earlier the leguas that they made looked very similar to the legbaras before they really started evolving or mutating into other interesting things.
I notice in Yoruba land they're more carved. They seem to be more carved, more
What do you mean by
like
carved?
more, like more detail.
Are you referring to wood?
Some of them, yeah, like the Eshu, with the two faces that they carve, like the little statues.
Oh, you mean the Santeria?
No, I mean in Yoruba land.
So you're talking about the wooden statues? I'm
Yes.
just making sure because we went from clay to carving, and I just want to make sure I didn't miss something in between.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, there are several carvings for Eshu. Some of them are used. I believe that you could be used as like an object to worship or an object to call there, so you can worship. Then of course you have the dance wands for Eshu. So yeah, I mean, like I said, there's the yangi. You have them made out of clay, and then there's wooden carvings, and then there's preparations, different type of preparations for, like the Babalaos might have a way they prepare their Eshu. Ogun might have a way they prepare their Eshu. So, and it doesn't make that any different from one another. It's just they're prepared differently, but it's still Eshu. But now then you have a road for Eshu like the Asheta that you were speaking about. So there's a way to make this, and there's several roads. There's a money drawing Eshu, there's a good luck Eshu. Then on top
Speaking
of
of different roads, what is the function of Eshu Odara?
Eshu Odara is an Oriki name. I'm not quite sure the translation of it. From what I've read, it has something to do with the nature of its character, but I'm not quite sure, honestly. This is not a road. This is just an Oriki, or what the Babalaos often call Eshu. They just say Eshu Odara, or Eshu, or like someone saying Eshu Laroye.
I see a lot of Babalaos have that particular Eshu. That's why I asked.
Yeah. Well, it's not necessarily a particular Eshu, like it's different from what I would do as an Eshu from Ogun. I just call it Eshu. We won't call it Eshu Odara. Where other places might call Eshu Babakekere. And that's commonly what you might hear. Or you might hear Legbara. So it doesn't make any of these places that there are Eshus different, like in function for any reason. Not to my knowledge. But if you're talking about a road, this is something completely different. But remember what I said earlier? I could see why the confusion with Eshu came about. This is one of the reasons why. Because there's so many ways, there's so much diversity on how to make an Eshu just for worship. Then you have all these roads of Eshu, which you can make for various different reasons. And then now you have these Elegbaras, or these indoor Eshus, and you have maybe a few of them as well. You see what I'm saying? So there's several different ways of making, consecrating, spiritual preparations for Eshu. You know, it's just not as simple like with some of the other Orisha. There's just Shango. There's no Shango of good luck. You know, you see what I'm saying? So his tradition, Eshu's tradition is very unique like that.
Okay, Baba. Would you say that Eshu, we kind of touched on this earlier, but would you say that Eshu has good character?
If we had to label it as Eshu, yes. I wouldn't say if I had to choose between Iwapele, Iwarere, and Iwatutu, I would say Iwarere. Where obviously, you know, like Orumila are people that follow Orumila, devotees of Orumila, you know, should follow Iwapele, who's a gentle character, you know.
And the reason why I asked that is I saw a Babalao ask this online, and you know, some people, even practitioners, were saying, "Well, no, you know, he doesn't." And we alluded to this earlier. For what his lot is, what he's supposed to do, he does exactly what he's supposed to do.
To do exactly, and in the nature for
And I think that gets lost in translation
translation.
sometimes
Because
because
a lot of people don't realize that
attribute good to.
like Eshu is feared by both man and divinity alike because of the nature of what he does. He's a law enforcing agent,
Right.
you know.
But we attribute good character to one specific type of character.
Right, like it's like Ogun has good character, but you know,
He might do something that you don't think is good character, you know.
Yeah, but you know, for what he does in his nature, yes, he's considered in good. Good sometimes doesn't mean perfect. It doesn't mean the standardization for which another holds to you. It means I can be good and still have a temper. Hell, I can be violent and still be good.
Right. Because you could defend the poor, defend the innocent. You don't
Right.
know why that person is being violent. You know,
Right.
like the deacons of defense of the 60s that defended their church with guns. Some people would probably say they didn't have good character. But when you're fighting the Klan, what else you gonna fight with? You know, so they were defending their families, their church members, their communities. So they were very much violent, and in my estimation, they had good character.
Now, on the other side of the argument of this, which I can, which I often debate with myself, like I said, those were the three I had to choose from. If I had to go another route, I would say if we had to do it between good and bad, I'd say he's neither. He doesn't conform.
Doesn't conform to anything. Eshu is what he is, and
Right.
he does.
He's not a hot. He's not a hot. He's not a hot divinity. He's not a cold divinity. Can he be hot? Yes. Can he be? But he doesn't conform. That's what makes him so special about and be able. What he's able to do is based a lot on that, about not conforming. And as far as I know, he's the only Orisha that is able to do that. He doesn't conform to either side. You know, he gets to deal with the malevolence because of his character and what he's able to do. Though a lot of times we may look at this as bad, I don't look at it as bad at all. Well, that's within his character and what he's meant to do. Let's just make sure he does it in a positive way for me. You know, though police is a bad example to use nowadays just because of the violence and whatnot. But if you really, really look at what police are supposed to do, you can see why they're both feared and loved. They're supposed to protect and serve. If they actually did their job. But if you look at Eshu in that way, Eshu can protect and serve you. But always you got to remember, like anything else, remember his function. Just don't get on the other side of it. It's like a cop. People. Yeah, it's like a cop. You don't go out, drinking a bottle of Hennessy outside your window and drive by a cop and smile at him and expect nothing to happen.
Why did you have to do that?
I'm just saying.
No, now I got the goddamn. I got to put them cuffs on you now.
So yeah, it's like I could see the light that he's put into. It's just we focus so much on what we perceive because of our upbringing and not realizing the other side of it where it is good. It's like anything else. Like for Ogun, a knife. We don't normally think of a knife as a bad thing. We can do bad things with it. So she shouldn't be looked at. It's a person that is doing his function according to his lot in life. It's what the divinity is supposed to do. Though you may look at him crazy, It's
kind of like Iku.
What do you mean by that?
Is he bad for being deaf?
Yeah, no.
Yeah. This is function.
Right.
People die.
Yeah, it's my job. So, and that's really what it is. If we start looking at how to use Eshu in a way for Eshu to bless us or to get rid of negativity and replace it with Ire. But a lot of times we just focus on, no, he tricks people. He does that. But in every example that he tricks people, most of the time, I'm not saying all the time, most of the time, it's because it's something that has to do with a reading. Now, there are other times where Eshu does trick people. Like I know in one version of the story with Obatala, where they talk about where he gets drunk with palm wine because of the party, Eshu is the reason or what's behind that, because he was jealous of his rank and authority because of what he was prescribed through Olodumare of being the creator of man, being able to at least in one narrative. I'm not saying this is the narrative that runs all across.
The narrative changes 100 times.
Right. But the point is, in every narrative, what is it trying to convey? Like for instance, we have in one narrative where Ogun is thought to be Eshu's father. Okay. But in this narrative, what's important is Ogun, after a while, threw him out because Eshu was difficult and threw him out into the street. This is why Eshu is known for being outside. We have the same story to other divinities that explain differently, but the end result is why he is outside. This is why we have the Omokurin Duduita, the dark-skinned man of the outside. How to get outside? How to get at the fork of the road?
Yeah, all of his references are to outside things.
Yeah, it's how we got there. There's one about him and Obatala, there's so many narratives about how he got there, but too many people focus on the story and treat it like it's stone. Like it has to be this way. We have to. And when you do that, it's crazy. You have in one area where Oshun is the mother of Eshu, but then in another area where it speaks about an Ifa, you have Adin. So which one's right?
Keep telling people this system's not congruent. And if you're looking for it to be.
Well, then, it's also, you got to realize the Adin story of Eshu being his mother is just a story behind not to offer Adin oil to Eshu because it's taboo. Yeah, we just, it's just people really need to, you cannot approach this the same way that you would study Christianity. You can't approach this Yeah, in a lot of ways, the way you would study other things, you know, and you have to give up your perception of this Western mentality when learning things, or it will be to your detriment, especially if you're doing Isese.
Yeah.
Because it will mess up things later, if not up front.
You're gonna get it twisted really quickly. Really quickly. Let's take some questions for the chat if people have them. I see right here, Asiatic Black Man 19. Piece, is there any relevance to Ogun being represented by palm? I'm assuming palm oil, maybe? Palm tree?
The only thing I can remember, palm fronds, which is the Mahdi wool.
Yeah.
But what was the question?
The question was, is there any relevance to Ogun being represented by palm? So if you take that to Mari wool, that would be part of his dress.
Yeah. It's what we decorate Ogun with.
Right. If you take it to palm oil, that's one of his things that he likes.
Right.
Likes palm oil. So in those two
instances,
palm wine, yeah. So in those three instances, yes, I can say being attributed to him or things that he likes. So I hope we answered your question. Any more? I see one. Oh no, that's a statement. Okay. Any more questions from the chat? Let me know. Holla at me. Appreciate you, Brother Robert Ron, for tuning in. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for being with us on this Saturday morning. And also, let us know what Orisha you want us to do next. We take suggestions. If we got some literature on it, we can, and Baba Ogundiran feels comfortable in presenting on that Orisha, we'll get to it. We've already done Ogun. Now we're doing Eshu. Throw some out there. I'd set myself up.
Yeah, I know you did.
I should know my wife was in the chat. It was gonna say, "Oh yeah."
Oh, I thought you set yourself up for something else.
No, I set myself up. Oh yeah, Baba. Do you feel comfortable doing a show like this about oh yeah?
I can be, just not right this moment.
Of course not right. Come on now. You gotta come up with the questions. Come up with the inquiries. Come on now.
It's definitely a possibility. It's just Oya is one of them I don't know a whole lot about. So it depends on the questioning.
Well, I will develop the questions and we will go from there. We'll get that in there. Also, I see I don't even know what Obanje is. Have you heard of this?
Is there anything else that's said other than that?
No, it's just Obanje. I've never heard of that, Orisha.
Oh, Banje.
If you have any more information about that, Mr.
Obanje?
Relation between Eshu and Obanje. I don't know who Obanje is. You'll have to elaborate more. But we have Ifa as a suggestion, or Rumila as a suggestion, Obatala as a suggestion, Yemoja as a suggestion. That's why I don't know who he is. He's the son of Papa Legba. Papa Legba would be Voodoo.
Okay, I wouldn't know.
and that's why we don't. That's why I didn't know who he was. Not as familiar as with West African voodoo. It's not a system that I practice. I know a little bit about it, but I guess going back to your question, would be any relation between those two? I'm not sure. You would probably have to go the West African voodoo route to answer that question, brother, because I'm not sure. I don't want to base it off of Orisha, you know, and say, you know, anything about their literature, because their literature could be different concerning those divinities. Egungun. That is a woo. Y'all sure y'all want us to do Egungun? Gonna be some mad folks. Hey, I'm gonna put this disclaimer out. If we do Egungun, don't be mad at me.
Whoa, what are you mad at you?
Hey, don't be mad at me or Ogundiran if we do Egungun, because Egungun from an Isese perspective is very different than what you're probably used to. Now I think we definitely gotta do Egungun. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah. we gotta save that though.
That's gonna be tough. Well, because there's certain things that I know I won't speak about Egungun because of the nature of the society. But you're right. That's a you have to put a disclaimer up.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to. You're trying to have me shot.
Oh man. Oshosi, Osayin. These are good good suggestions. I see a question: is Mami or Mama Wata related to Orisha? Mami Wata is West African voodoo. She is not an Orisha. Let's see if I missed any question. I don't think I missed any. I don't think I missed any.
Yeah.
Are there any more inquiries? Those are some good suggestions, though.
You got 7.
Those are some good suggestions. I think Oya would be very interesting. Clear up some misconceptions from a Isese perspective.
Yeah. I mean, there's some, I mean, it's just depending on how deep the questions are, you know.
Yeah.
I really don't like to talk about things that I can't get further into. Yeah, out of all of them, honestly, that were given, Osain, honestly, is something that I know about, but I'm not sure about. Definitely the Yemonja, Obatala, Orumila, without a problem. Oya, Egungun is like a death sentence. Now, as far as the Oshosi and Osain, these are more that I don't wish to speak about just because of the nature. If you study with me about Ogun, you learn about him and that necessarily tradition. Or if I did do something, it would be like a combination. Like we'll do Osayin and Oshosi, go over some basic information, but nothing. Yeah, but nothing really, really deep outside of that because of just for some personal reasons. But yeah, as far as immediately, I don't have a problem doing Order Mila. Obatala, though I would rather want to ask about that one first. Not
you
so much.
Do Orishima and Ifa together?
Oh, actually teach the different. Actually, that would actually be good. Orumila and Ifa. Orumila versus Ifa.
Ooh, some people think they're the same thing.
I mean, it's up to you. That's what you want?
That'd be dope.
Yeah, Gungun is like I said. It's not that I won't do it. That's just kind of like I don't know if I want to deal with the backlash that's going to come from that.
Blow back. Who the hell do you think you are?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm
kind of dealt with some of it in my presentation. Oni Shea, if you go on the Mossi Warrior Clan, I dealt with some of it in regards to the altars. So you will see some of it in there. But I didn't go as deep as I could have on purpose.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about it. Some of these divinities, whether we realize it or not, are very secretive.
Yeah.
And it's not secretive in a sense that you can't necessarily see what I'm doing. Sometimes it is like that. But Ogun is like that. Eshu is like that. There are some that are more open, and there are some that are extremely they're kind of open but secret. So secret doesn't always mean secret doesn't always mean like you can't watch or but certain things are like people don't speak about. So I'm trying to make a very assertive effort about what I necessarily put out, because I do believe if you're going to go to there should be some good information put out that's decent about the Orisha. But to a certain point, I don't like to get too deep, because this is really for someone who wants to train. I'm trying to keep a very close eye on what should necessarily be given out versus what really has no business of being given out. It doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong or secretive, but why give it out? If you're not going to put the dedication into someone and and learn it. So.
Oh, my crazy. What about now? I'm assuming when you said Ajay, brother, I'm assuming you mean the mothers or the Yami and not the deity of wealth. So what would you think about on the mothers?
I have to sit about this one. I've often wanted. No, this is. I don't feel comfortable as a man giving a class on Ajay, really. Or
really woman dominated.
Yeah, it's like I get it, and I have a lot of information with it.
I know you do.
I just don't. I mean, I can give basic understandings of certain things, but it wouldn't be that long of a class. My basic thing that I want people to understand about it. Sometimes we concentrate so much on the spiritual aspect of it that we don't realize of how the examples we get in real life. That's what I would like to explain about so people get the upfront of why people are like, or why you really should I don't think you really want to mess with them.
Some of us got some AJ mothers,
right? And then it's difficult. I just don't. I would rather find a female that I can trust and give everything that I have to, and then but that's hard too, because getting to know someone and then making sure they're not going to run off with the information, because some of it is women have a lot of power over children, their own children, particularly, I'm just going to leave it at this, particularly if they breastfed. And a lot of things within that culture and how their things are done, it's misunderstood, but it is, the Ayami are something that are needed, that they play a very important role. And without them, we would royally just be screwed. But when they can be chaotic and havoc and cause problems like anything else, they tend to be a lot more proficient at it.
It's just like in life. Without your mother, you'd be screwed.
Without any nourishing aspect.
Mm-hmm. It'd be very hard for you.
Right. And I mean in anything. Because if you didn't have rain, then you don't have anything to nourish plants, and you can't eat.
What about Ibeji or Aganju?
Aganju, no. I don't know anything other than
I don't either.
Name
other than his
and a lot of the misconceptions that aren't true about that divinity. Like,
I can tell you he's not a volcano deity in Yoruba land.
Right. He's not a volcano divinity. His name has something to do with the look of his face, if I remember correctly. The stern look of his face or something. But he is
you be mugging.
Wasn't laughing. He was a king after Shango. So that had a very strong rule from my understanding, but I don't know enough about him at all, and I mean at all, to really speak anything about him.
Like you trying to get me to do a presentation on a Ramfe. I was like, it's gonna be short.
Divinity of Thunder and Lightning. Presentation over.
He's a firehouse owner, whatever.
Yeah, he's another Thunder and Lightning divinity. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be real short.
Ibeji.
What about Ibeji?
I can do a little on. Ibeji is interesting because as far as I know, it's not set up like other Orisha. Like you don't get initiated to Ibeji. Not that I'm aware of.
Not that I'm aware of either.
Yeah. So and the people that have Ibeji, like parents that have Ibeji, need to have twins. There are things for them to learn. There are different orikis they should learn. Of course, you should learn how to see when you have Ibeji, and there's a lot of misconceptions about Ibeji that probably should be cleared up first. Like a lot of people just think Ibeji is a particular Orisha that you just get. Like I'll just go get Shango. It shouldn't be like that. Ibeji is a very personal divinity, but yeah, I can do.
Not a twin. Why would you want Ibeji?
If Ibeji are in your family.
They're in your family. Okay.
But see, the thing is, if they were in your family and you were in the culture,
then they're going to manifest in some way.
You would already have the statues there. There would be no need.
Right. They would already been made.
Yeah, already been made, already been kept in the family. The problem is here is we don't have a family structure when it comes to divinity. A lot of times we're focusing on just ourselves, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because trying to rebuild that family structure is a lot more difficult.
Hard.
Trying to find out who your family divinity is versus if you have a different divinity. It's hard enough just with one.
What about Egbe?
Yeah, I can.
That's a deep one, boy.
Yeah, it is a deep one. Like I said, I won't get into real deep, but yeah, I can do Egbe just from. See, a lot of this, like a lot of those general information that people are misunderstood about. So a lot of information can be talked about there, definitely. And then even the word Egbe, the confusion with it. Like a lot of times when people just say Egbe, the people in the language and look, and even people that are familiar in the tradition may look at you and say, "Can you clarify?" So it's like sometimes saying Ori. to someone who's not in the tradition that's foreign that speaks it. Why are you talking about your head?
Yeah.
You go around saying egg bear.
Hey, that could be one. Would you be comfortable doing Ori?
Yes. As long as we didn't get into the object.
Okay.
Because I already teach, I teach a class on that anyway.
No object questions. No object inquiry.
Well, I wouldn't say no object questions as long. Well, okay, I see what you're doing because you're writing down the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I'm developing the questions.
Right. Now, if someone has a question about the Ileoti, I might be able to answer it because there's a lot of kind of at least with my own eyes, the way that I have seen on Facebook where a lot of people are making Ileoti or even offering to Ileoti, from my understanding, it's not being done correctly. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Well, I'll say one more thing to that. Ileoti is a clean divinity.
Oh, they dousing it?
So yeah, and like I said, I'm just gonna leave it at that. There's not a not every Orisha is taken care of in the same way. You know, it's not a cookie cutter system.
Okay, Brother Alan Green said both. Could you do Aj as in the wealth?
I really don't know that much about Aj Shagala, honestly, other than she's a market divinity.
I don't either.
I don't even know what region she's actually from. I don't know whether she's an overall divinity. Because there's a few market divinities. People just aren't aware of them.
Right. I have one Oriki for Aj. I don't know how accurate it is.
But for the Orisha? Okay.
Yeah. Talks about wealth and beaded jewelries and stuff like that, but I don't know how accurate it is.
I mean, I'm sure I'll run into it.
You gotta check these Orikis, man. They're telling you it means this, you find out it don't. We've been through this before. That's why I said I don't know how accurate it is.
No, I was laughing about the one with the the kneeling, about chopping off his knees. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, don't say that at all. That's what I mean by you gotta vet these Orikis that you might even get out of books from Nigerian.
Well, you know, I'm not trying to defend anyone, but I will say this: there is some legitimate problems when translating, even when you know the language well on both ends.
Yes, some of these words. My thing is, if the word is not there, don't try to make it there. It's not there.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times, you know, sometimes they'll define things by what it implies, not necessarily by what it means. And sometimes it works out better that way, because if you get it translated directly, you're like, what in the hell are you talking about?
need some context after. You're like, okay,
Right.
I understand this is what this means, but what does this mean
Right.
that you sent?
Right. And I've gone through plenty of examples of that. I've gone and read in books where what they implied it to me was correct, but what it actually meant was so far off, you know. But it is what it is, you know. It's there is somewhat of a difficulty in the language, and then on top of that, due to some words and how the words can be defined depending on context. I think I said it before. Look at your name.
Not gonna get into that.
So if you want a prime example how things can be defined and where it can become a problem.
Not gonna get into why my name has so many meanings.
So,
Sheesh. It's your fault. You named me.
Yeah, well,
It's your fault.
I'll take credit for that.
You over there.
Actually, you need to come a little more back to your right. You pointed to my
You.
Just because you move your body, it means you're going off camera. He's still not pointing at me.
Oh man, let's wrap it up, man. Thank you all for coming out. I appreciate everybody sharing, subscribing. We're gonna try to continue to do this. So thank you for your suggestions. We're gonna take those into account. I'll come up with some questions, and we'll do this again on another Saturday. So, any last words, Baba?
Stay warm.
Yeah, because I heard that hawk is out there in America. Ooh, boy. Stay warm. It's the best advice you can get
right now.
Right now. So I will say Odabo, which means goodbye in the Yoruba language, and see you on another Saturday. Peace.